Okay, so if you were on page 75 in your ISN, you should have taped in pink notes from yesterday, right? So if you flip those pink notes, then you have notebook paper to write on, right? You're going to write right on page 75, okay? So I got good news and bad news for you. Well, the first part's probably not really good news, but as y'all are painfully aware, I am a disaster on a good day. You don't even want to know what goes on in my brain on a normal basis. And anyway, when I went to edit the notes for yesterday and make space for things, I wasn't really paying attention. And as I was teaching yesterday, I was thinking, dang, this is taking a lot longer than I thought. So 2A was actually 2A and B. That's why it went so long. And so the bad news, I sort of just flew through it yesterday. But the good news is that will give you some time to work today. But I want to do one additional thing on, like, I want you to write in a notebook paper. You don't have to look at this, you can just look at mine. But we did 2 of the inequality questions where they both had these crazy quadratic formulas. Well, this one wasn't too bad, but this one, trying to figure out what was what, I truly believe that if that is on your exam, it would not be that crazy, because then what are we testing? In this question, we would really just be testing quadratic formula more than anything and trying to figure out where the heck it goes. Does that make sense? So I want you to, there was not one on here where, how do you handle the domain if it's not something insane like this? Like, hopefully this made sense, right? You could tell that because of this, it was all positive, so we didn't have to worry about it, right? But then here, it wasn't all positive, and we had to figure out where the heck it went. So on your paper, just on the notebook paper part of that, I want you to write this question down. We're not working the whole thing. Just write this down. Log of x squared plus 13x minus 30 minus log of x plus 7 is less than 0. Okay, so if I needed to, if I was going to work a question like this, we would start the same way we did yesterday. We do some work here that we're not going to take the time to do. We'd do a number line, we'd put our stuff on it, we'd figure out our positives and negatives and whatnot, and we can do all that, right? Because that's kind of old business. I'm just kind of skipping that part so we can talk about domain when it's not a quadratic formula. And I clearly need to change these notes. So if we're just talking about the domain here, let's start with the easy one. So the easy one is x plus 7. X plus 7 has to be greater than 0. And remember, the reason we have to do this for these, and we didn't on the other number line ones, is because logs have a restricted domain, and I can only take the log of a positive number. And you know how I know that for sure is because I know what my little parent function looks like, and I know that there is a vertical asymptote at x equals 0, right? So your domain is everything greater than 0. So when I do this, I get that x is greater than -7, and that one's pretty easy to do, right? But I also need this input to be positive. So I also need x squared plus 13x minus 30 to be greater than 0. And notice here that this sign is different than this sign because we're talking about 2 completely different things. This is, I want this function to be less than 0, but here these always have to be greater because I need a positive number there, all right? I could use a quadratic formula here, but I don't have to because I can actually factor this, right? So when I factor this, what are my numbers? 10 and 3, 15, 3, 15 and 2. It would have to be a positive 15 and a negative 2. The signs have to be opposite to get that negative 30, and if you do 3 and 10, you're going to end up with a 7 somehow. So those are my numbers, and I get x equals negative 15 and 2, okay? But that doesn't look like this does. Like, I need to know the range of numbers that I'm allowed to do regardless of what's happening with the number line there. So here, essentially, you almost have to do a number line inside your domain, but it's not that complicated because if I make my number line and I've got this negative 15 and this 2, right? So I want you to think about this. Do you have any idea what this red function would look like if you graphed it? You got no clue, right? Neither do I, because I just made it up this morning, right? So I don't know, and it doesn't really matter. Do you have some clue about what this looks like? Yeah, you do. Okay, so like that one up there, you have no idea what's happening with that because, you know, there's a lot of things going on. That's why we have to do the number line because we don't have an idea of what the function looks like. But we know what parabolas look like, right? And so I know that this is a parabola, and does it open up or down? Up, because A is 1, right? Remember, or A is positive. Remember that your number line is your x-axis. Okay, that's basically what it is. So that means that I know that my parabola looks something like this. I have no idea what the minimum is, but it doesn't matter. It's got to cross at these 2 points. That's what zeros are. And it has to open up, so it's got to look like that. And what I want to know is, when is this thing positive? Well, it's positive here and here. Does that make sense? On my answer key, I'm pretty sure I didn't draw the parabola. I'm pretty sure I just did this, but it's the same thing. Okay, so I think drawing it is just visually. That's why you know that. I don't know, again, I don't know what the y-intercept is, but I don't care. None of that matters. It's just, where's the function positive or negative? So for the domain, in order for me to be able to make sure I take a log of a positive number in that first one, then my x's have to go from negative infinity to negative 15, and then from 2 to infinity. But remember, there are 2 parts to that. There was this one, which was that first part, and then there was, well, then there was this one. So x also has to be greater than negative 7, otherwise the second one doesn't work, right? So since this has to be true and it all has to be true at the same time, since x has to be greater than negative 7, I can't even use this part. This is the only usable part. Okay, do you understand why? So there's extra stuff you've got to look at. You do the number line like you're used to doing the number line. Then whatever you're, like if my answer over here, and again, I don't know what it is because I made it up this morning and I didn't even think to actually work it out because I was only planning on doing this. But if my answer for whatever it is goes from 5 to infinity, then this is totally fine. If I go from negative 3 to 5, then if I negative 3 to 5, I would actually be able to go from 2 to 5. You got to put all these together, maybe draw yourself a little number line and color them in and see where everything overlaps. That's the easiest way to do it, I think, to make it make sense. Okay, but I wanted you to see at least one of the domains where you actually get something out of it, and what in the heck do you do with it? The notes were not that good. I should have changed them. But are we good on that? Any questions?